again to both of you for being here tonight. And thank you to Roche Beaubois for making our little stage look so amazing. I always tell my guests, you know, feel like you're in my living room and we're making it happen. I like candid conversations. I like us to open up and tell anecdotes and things that people maybe never knew about you. Feel free to share and open up tonight. So I will begin with this. We're here to honor organizations that have received Women in Governance's Parity Certification, and you've both been enrolled with your organizations for multiple years. I will begin with a question to both of you regarding the certification process. What has that brought to your organization? What have you noticed? Has there been a culture shift? Has there been a positive impact? I hope yes. Jaqui, I'll begin with you.
Okay, I'll start. So first, thank you so much for the invitation, and I'm so excited to share this couch with John.
Absolutely.
So yes, it's brought a lot to us actually. So two key things. First, I think it's always great to be held accountable, and so the fact that we have an independent external organization taking a look at what we do, that's incredibly valuable. It helps keep us honest. The second thing is, you know, the certification itself, the questions, the process, in some way it's your roadmap, right? And so we're very active in the diversity space, but I think no matter what stage of the journey that you're on, you're going to find out new things. And for us, for example, one thing that we really challenged ourselves on is you have a question in the certification about gender of people managers and equity around gender of people managers. And so that's something that we really focused on over the past couple of years.
And you've actually achieved the platinum status for the second year in a row, so congrats on that.
Thank you.
Yeah, there has been actually a lot of progress. You know, you've moved from bronze to gold to platinum to platinum.
100%. So. And one of the things that we did focus on that actually helped trigger that move was that gender parity in our people manager population.
Fantastic. And it is, as you said, it's a roadmap and it's a continuous exercise. It's not just, you know, a snapshot in time and this is what we need to do and then we stop, because it's the first thing that's going to go in the wrong direction if we don't keep intentional focus on all the time. John, how about you?
Well, first of all, thank you as well for having us here. I've gotten to do some other chats with Jaqui in the past, and I've always been so impressed with her passion and your passion. So I just feel honored to be up here with both of you. Because in this case, we're silver, we're second best, and we've got something to shoot for. But I think, Jaqui, you said it best. It really was about the roadmap. And so we recognized, you know, a little over 2 years ago, that we wanted to do something different in terms of really building the culture in TMX. Not just for inside, but as an operator of marketplaces of the exchanges, we need to be a role model for other companies as well. You know, we have 3,000 companies that list with us, and we've got to be able to set the right example. And you and I chatted about that 2 years ago. And so what we really found was that roadmap, that ability to understand what is best practice, because you don't even know where you're starting. And it really helped us identify not only where we needed to go, but actually some areas that we were actually pretty good at already, and that we didn't know that. And so the whole program, through the last 2 years we've been in it, has been instrumental in identifying the strengths we've got to build on and the roadmap to how we're going to get to the next stage. And that's been instrumental.
And when I met John a couple of years ago, 3 years ago maybe, you were the CFO at the TMX at the time. And you were very excited about all the work that we did. And I said, you know, you need to show the way. You can't be telling all these organizations about the work that they need to do if you don't actually do it at the TMX. And by the way, resistance is futile. And so, and so he agreed, and thank you. And you've also progressed a lot over the past couple of years. So that's really great. Jaqui, I want to talk about diversity as a whole. I mean, we all know there's talent shortage. We all see it. We all feel it in our organizations. And now, what do we do if we can't count on every single member of our society? Women, first of all, of course, 51% of the population, but people of color, indigenous people, LGBTQ people, etc. What do you feel is the responsibility of corporate leaders in that attainment of more diversity, equity, and inclusion, of course?
Well, I love what you just said. It's absolutely not a choice anymore, right? So we have a structural labor issue in Canada. So pause for a moment and think about a Canada where women truly have parity with men, where we see equal representation at every level of organizations, where Black people, Indigenous people, other people of color, where think about how amazing Canada is. We let in so many new immigrants, but such a high percentage don't get to practice in the field that they've studied. So imagine a Canada where that's not the case, where we truly see parity. That Canada is unbeatable. Now imagine the Canada where we continue to waste talent. What are we going to do? So there's, it's great to think about diversity from it's a good thing to do, I'm passionate about it, but we don't have a choice anymore, Caroline.
We don't have a choice, John. What do you think that corporate leaders should do more of to actually attain more diversity within our workplaces?
Take on the responsibility. We need to think about these jobs not in terms of what they can do for you, but what we get to do with them. And when you get the opportunity to lead an organization, it's a privilege and a responsibility beyond just running the day-to-day. It's about, when I took this role on and had the chance to think about what I wanted to do with it, was how do I leave the organization a better place than I found it? And especially in an organization that's in the middle of the capital markets, how do you advance the marketplace for the generations that come after us? So it's like a sacred obligation to leave things better than we found them. And I do strongly believe that when we are in a position where we can actually demonstrate what we can do, and even if we're not there yet, and we're not there yet, we've got lots of things to do still, we've got to show it with our actions. And so we've been working hard to ingrain the DEI culture in the organization and to figure out where we can take it. But what we've also tried to do, and Jackie and I chatted about this, is recognize that your organization is the size it is. We're not a massive organization. We're 1,600 people. So we also have to make choices so that we can make a difference in a number of key areas that's authentic and delivers result. Because if we try to do everything, we achieve nothing. And so our focus has been, how do we advance women in the organization, advance women in leadership, ensure diversity so that everyone that's in TMX can bring their best self, their authentic self to work every day, because then we all succeed because we actually perform in the market, we perform our clients because our people are comfortable. And then the other piece for diversity is we're pushing really hard on how we make an impact for Indigenous communities. The stock exchange is there to help companies raise capital and grow and hire, and the Indigenous Communities Canada haven't had that same experience, so we're trying to figure out how do we bring those capabilities to those communities so they can share in the same prosperity that all of us had the chance to be in.
Yeah, and there are concrete things that you've been doing at the TSX in terms of EDI initiatives. There are numerous, actually, initiatives that you've implemented, and you told me several that maybe you want to share some of the other initiatives that you've done at TMX.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one of the pieces I'll raise just on that same topic is, we're also, in addition to being Parity Certified, we're also participating in the Progressive Aboriginal Relations Program. And you can now find on TMX Money, note that down, all the companies that are part committed and part certified companies. And then as of this afternoon, you can now see all the TSX listed companies that are parity certified as well. So all 13 public companies in Canada that are parity certified are on TMX Money.
Wow, thank you.
You're welcome.
Amazing. I also want to talk about a topic that's kind of a hot topic these days as we're returning, not to work. I don't say return to work because we've been at work all this time. We've actually probably worked more than we've had to work in a long time. Return to the office. And so there are the people who say, look, there's such talent shortage, you just let people do whatever they want to do. And then there are the people who say, well, if people don't come back to the office, we're going to lose our culture. And then there's what we're seeing, the discrepancies between what women want to do, what men want to do, but also the impact on the careers of women is one of the topic that to me is front and center. So I'd like us to talk about that for a minute. Mercer has actually a research recently that's quite striking. Could you talk to us about that, Jaqui?
Yeah, absolutely. So what you've just mentioned, a huge concern for me. Personally, partly because of my personal experience, partly because of some of the statistics and research that we're seeing. So we recently did our annual Global Talent Trend Survey. We also do a subset of that survey in Canada, and we see that men are more likely to come back into the office physically to work versus women. In Canada, that gap is actually bigger than we see globally. It's almost 20 points. That's big. We also see, though, that women are reporting less advantage from hybrid work than men. So if you ask the question, has your work-life balance improved because of hybrid work, men are more likely to say yes than women. We also see that women, when you ask the question, do you feel, sorry, let's fix the scarf, okay. When you ask the question, do you feel that your workplace culture is healthy, men are more likely to say yes than women. So that's a whole lot to unpack. But if I think about my personal journey, sponsorship, mainly men who advocated for me, fought for me to be at the table. Those sponsorship is based on relationships, right? You have to really believe in someone. So if we end up with a situation where we see more men being physically present in the return versus women, that's sending off alarm bells. That's sending off alarm bells. And you can talk all you want about, how we make it even, through technology, et cetera, I think there's a lot you can do. But I don't need a research paper to tell you what's going to happen if white men come back to the office and women, especially women of color, do not. And we also see that in the US, I don't have stats for Canada, there's a very high propensity for Black people to say they would prefer to work at home so they can avoid microaggressions in the office. So a lot to unpack, need a healthier workplace culture, but also need to make sure that we don't take a step back on our progress.
Well, I mean, we're doing all this work to actually give disproportionate visibility to Black women, for instance, in the workplace. We talk about that a lot, right? And so for them to prefer to stay at home, to me, that's not what success looks like. I'd rather see us deconstruct the unconscious bias or deconstruct those microaggressions that need to go. That's what needs to go. Certainly not the Black woman. She needs to stay, and she needs to move up the ladder, and she needs to be sponsored by the white man, for instance. And it's going to be much easier for him to do that if he knows her, right? You need to trust the person. You need to bump into each other in the corridors. You need to rub elbows. You need to have lunch together. And that doesn't necessarily happen through Zoom. And John, I'd love to hear your thoughts on the young people that we've recruited, people who've joined organizations over the past couple of years coming out of university, and they've actually never worked in a corporate setting. They have no idea, and they've never met you, possibly. I think there are people you've met tonight from your team. Is that?
There is, yes.
Yeah.
Thank you for throwing a party so I can meet some of my own team members.
So what do we do?
I mean, there are a couple things. I mean, one of the things that we learned really early on is you've got to engage and communicate even more often, almost to the point of it being unnatural. So connecting with new people, encouraging them to get engaged in both teams, in town halls, participating across businesses, and recommending exactly what you just talked about, which is you need champions in the organization. Because a champion in your organization isn't just a sounding board, isn't just there to help you navigate and learn who's who. They're actually there to also de-risk your opportunity. Because when you've got a good mentor and a good champion that's also looking out for the new roles for you, they're taking some of that onus on themselves to make sure that you're ready for it, to help you be successful in it. So ensuring that the women and everyone else in our organization have those champions, and that's when I've mentored folks in our organization, I take that on myself. Their success is partly my responsibility. And so having people that are willing to do that in the organization is key. But we always encourage all the new people is you've got to stay connected. And we found we've had to come up with new ways to keep people engaged and connected. And some of them are just purely social. Like sign up for the lunchtime concert series because you're going to connect in a different way. Open door, come and ask any question you want. So breaking down some of those barriers. But then we've also found we changed the contract as well. So more investment in things like mental health support. I don't know if I'm speaking out of turn, but we're rolling out better parental leave. My HR team I may have stepped over my toes there. But all of these things, we're taking everything we learned from the last 2 years, and we want to reinvest in the stuff that worked, and then watch out for the stuff that didn't work. And the piece I really want to build on Jackie's comments, because we thought about the exactly kind of thing that this whole working remote and then the return is an experiment we're all doing in real time. Well, let's recognize it. It's an experiment in real time, and we haven't all got it right. But one of the things we've recognized is that return to work, hybrid, whatever model people are coming back with, it has to be about the role and not just the individual choice. Because if we've got people that are choosing not to come in and those that aren't for the same kind of role, we're going to create an imbalance. And in order to make that work, we need leaders that will lead by example. So if I'm leading a hybrid team, I better be hybrid as well. If I'm coming in 5 days a week, I'm not setting the right example for my team or my managers, and recognizing that we actually have to train managers to be better managers in a more complicated work environment than they had 2 years ago. So all three of those things need to be true for us to be successful in a new hybrid model and not leave folks behind.
Absolutely, and probably managers that need to keep their proximity bias in check for when the time comes for performance evaluations, and we tend to rate higher people that we see more often than people that we don't see, when we should really be rating the output, the work that they do. So, Jackie, do you feel that if we're imposing hybrid and there are people who are coming in 5 days a week, we should tell them, stay home for 2 days? Like, how far do we go? Because we're saying freedom. Anybody should do whatever they want. But then we say, but don't come 5 days a week, because that's not good for those who don't want to come 5 days a week. But what about those who decide, I want to come 0 days a week, and then there are people who feel that for their mental health, they need to be in the office a couple of days, but there's nobody, so kind of feel lonely in the office. So,
yeah. So it depends on the organization and the role, as John said. I'll speak for us at Mercer. We have not said you can do whatever you want. We did a lot of work about a year ago, focus groups, surveys, a lot of listening to understand what our people thought they wanted. We serve clients, right? So what our clients want us to do is really important. So we landed on a hybrid model, 2 days minimum in the office, 3 days your choice. We were really clear that one of the reasons that we went with that 2-day minimum is that we want some commonality of experience. I mean, for us, consulting is an apprenticeship, right? So the idea that there's not going to be any in-person content, that didn't work for us. And we talked to our people about, we're trying to find a balance between respecting what works for you as an individual with what we owe to each other. Not what you owe to Mercer, but what you owe to each other in terms of helping your colleagues feel like they belong and grow. So we landed on that 2-3. I asked my leadership team at that time, please do not be in the office more than 3 to 4 days a week. So to John's point, modeling the behavior, in some way making sure that the access is a little bit even. So anyone else is free to come in more than 2 days, but if you are at a certain level, you're in maximum 3 to 4. So I'm in 2 to 3 days.
Perfect. Yeah, I think for women who actually want to manage their careers, staying home 5 days a week, I find that difficult to really attain the levels of networking, of personal branding, of allyship, etc. If you're not able to see and be seen and bump into someone at the coffee machine and hear conversations and be drawn into a meeting that you would probably have not participated in had you not been there. And my biggest concern is that the men be in the meeting room physically while the women are at home through the Zoom, and the important conversations and the big decisions are made once they close those laptops. And this is how the Old Boys Club is back. And you know, we need to avoid that. That to me, anyway, moving on, talking about mentoring and sponsoring, I'd love to hear both of you, because we mentioned earlier, we've got a global mentoring program. We've got women mentored from the four corners of the planet. We've got mentors everywhere. We've got top CEOs. And Desjardins actually is now the new partner of this program. And Guy Cormier, the CEO of Desjardins, is, yes, you can, very generously offered to be one of our mentors. So I'm naming Guy Cormier because they've also decided to be the partner, but we've got a number of amazing CEOs who are involved in this program. So I know, Jackie, that you don't like to talk about obstacles and difficulties along the way, which I am sure, like any woman and any woman of color, you have faced. So let's talk about the good stuff. Let's talk about your career and how you were able to achieve quite a big role of CEO of Mercer Canada.
Okay, well, thank you for that. So yeah, let's start with the good stuff. So, you know, I do find that very often in conversations like this, we talk about obstacles. I will talk about one because it's relevant. But I want to say at the start how amazing it is to do something every day that makes you feel like you live your purpose, where you get to serve, where you get to make a difference, and where you get to love what you do. So if there's obstacles and difficulties, I'm all in if that's the end result. Certainly one really obvious obstacle for me that relates to sponsorship is representation, right? So very often in my career, because of the area that I specialized in, I initially specialized in pension math and then investments. There weren't very many women in that field, and there certainly weren't very many black people in that field. So pretty typical for me to be the double only. That leads to some challenges, but maybe the biggest challenge was a personal one for me. Not early in my career, not thinking at all that I could ever be a leader, much less a CEO. And it wasn't because I wasn't confident or I wasn't good. I know lots of really smart, kick-ass black women who were nowhere near any of the jobs that I often had access to. So sponsorship was huge for me because I had sponsors, leaders who looked at me and said, we're seeing something for you that for some reason you aren't seeing for yourself. So come on, let's go. I have this job for you, you're gonna do it, it's gonna be great, I'm gonna have your back. So once that happened a couple of times, I started to build up that inner voice that said, doesn't matter if everybody else doesn't look like you can do this. So to talk about the power of sponsorship, for me, that's the difference between still being a junior investment analyst and being CEO. Without it, I would be nowhere.
Thank you for that. Thank you, Jackie. Now, John, do you feel it's different to mentor or sponsor a woman than it is a man?
That's a great question, and a tough one to take after Jackie's story has set me up with. Not in the objective, but sometimes in the approach. And I mean, I can't help but, I'm going to generalize a little bit, but it's generalization based on the experiences that we've had in terms of people coming up through the organization. But on average, not in all cases, you know, men in the organization will often put themselves forward for roles that they're not qualified for. And they'll throw their names in and give it a shot. Why not?
Well, good for them, though.
Yeah. And
we should do the same, but good for them.
But the corollary is sometimes some of our women or some of our folks that come from other backgrounds, unless they've got everything, won't put forward because they'll assume they can't get it. And so I do think that's one of the important differences in the mentoring side, the championship side, is actually encouraging people to put themselves forward for things they might not think they're ready for. And some of the best experiences I've had personally is when I've helped women in the organization into roles that they thought they weren't qualified for. And even coming, for myself, I mean, I didn't come from different disadvantages, but I got where I am today because people gave me a chance to step into roles that I wasn't qualified for, including CEO, by the way. But when someone's willing to give you a chance and they've got your back, that, again, it de-risks it. So I think that's the really important piece in the mentorship piece is help people understand where they are capable and qualified and can step into something that maybe is beyond what they think they can do themselves, and to give them the chance.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head right there, because when I launched Women in Governance in 2010, originally it was to really support the women. It was, in my mind, the women that needed, more ambition, get out of their comfort zone. Well, ambition, mind you, they have all the ambition that they need. It's too often that imposter syndrome or the impression that they're not good enough when they're more than qualified, sometimes overqualified. And you see it on boards. When the women come in, the level just rises up because they are so prepared, because they are so worried not to be competent enough, that all of a sudden the men realize, oh, I did not read that. What is she talking about? And the whole level of the board just goes up a notch. So definitely, but after having done all this mentoring work and governance training for women, then we realized the women were going back into workplaces that had traditionally been built by men, for men, and this is why we built the certification, because beyond the fact that the women need the stretch assignments, they need to be bold and ask for the promotion and ask for the raise that goes with it, but the organization also needs to do a better work with their culture and their policies. So that's why we're doing all of this. So we've kind of overextended our time together, but there's so much that we could talk about. Maybe just last pieces of advice that you may both have for other corporate leaders who may not have the same focus as you have on everything DEI, women, diversity, etc. Just so that they can, well, first of all, know where to start. You start at Women in Governance. That's quite easy. But last advice that you might share on how important this has been for your organizations.
Okay, do you want me to start?
Go for it.
Yeah, so I'd say you can do 100 things. Focus on belonging. Focus on belonging. And people will ask me, what's the thing I can change to make people feel like they belong? And it's not one thing. It's 100 small things that happen in a day. It's the signals you send with, how you entertain your clients. It's who represents you internally and externally, who people see on the stage. It's the kind of food you celebrate with. It's the organizations you give money to. It's the signals you send about personal appearance. One quick story, just before the pandemic, we had headshots taken for our new principals. Those are senior client-facing people. And we brought in an outside photographer. And as part of this, the photographer sent a list of, here's some suggestions for how to look professional. So first, the list for men was like, brush your teeth and show up. The list for women was super long. And embedded in that list was a suggestion about hair, and that, it's not to be professional, you should have straight hair, and, suggestions for straight. So imagine telling people that the structure of their natural hair is not good enough. And the most interesting thing about that story, Carolyn, is when we went back to the photographer and said, what the hell? They said, we've been sending this out for years and no one has noticed. So there's so much that's just embedded and entrenched that we don't even see anymore. Work on unpacking that. That's my advice.
Yeah, perfect. Love it. And love the examples about the food and the, just don't ask people to fit in. Mm-hmm. I never felt like I fit in anywhere when I was, in the corporate world, coming from Lebanon, growing up in the Lebanese Civil War. I had my own story and my own personality and, kind of a bit of a strong personality.
Worked pretty well for you.
Worked out in the end. But, we always say at Women in Governance, forget fit and it's really diversity that's going to bring a healthy level of disruption to your business. And if you ask people to all look alike, think alike, dress alike, then what are you doing with different perspectives and backgrounds and the innovation and the ideas that come from the fact that we did not all go to the same school, we did not all grow up in the same neighborhood? John?
Being authentic matters. And I know sometimes at this day and age, authenticity gets thrown around a little bit. It's almost the buzzword in it. But every organization here is on a different journey in terms of their development. And for all of us to show the intention on where we're trying to go and how we're trying to make a difference, it goes right back to our purpose as an organization. We make markets better, and that's our ambition to keep doing that. So everything that we do around improving the experiences for people in the organization and outside has to be authentic. People will see through it if it's not. And quite frankly, if people understand that we're actually trying to do better and make a difference, you actually get a lot more slack when you slip along the way. And you get a chance to fix it. And be it what we're doing in terms of women in the organization, what we're doing with Indigenous communities, we get that same credibility because it comes from the heart in terms of what we're trying to do to actually make things better. The last piece I'm going to leave with is, for all of us, is showcase the outstanding women leaders in your organization. For my 17-year-old daughter, who wants to be, I think in the order she said, lawyer, judge, prime minister. So, good thing that Justin's not here because she's going for the job. But there are multiple people in the room tonight who she's already said she wants to be like them because she's seen powerful female lawyers in these organizations that she can emulate. And so it's so important for people to see someone that they can look up to that has achieved and they can stretch for that. So showcase the talent, and that'll bring more people into the organizations.
Yeah, absolutely. Representation matters. Well, I want to thank both of you for taking the time to sit here and talk about everything that matters to you in terms of DEI with the wonderful audience that we have here tonight. To our audience, sit tight. We've got the celebration of all the organizations that have achieved Parity Certification that's coming up and the awards. But John, Jaqui, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
Thank you, Jaqui.